Hello and welcome to Benefit News. You're here with me, Marilyn Gore, and this is the Benefit Podcast. Today we have with us Siddhartha Dabhi. He's the co-founder for the Center of Grower-centric Eco-value Mechanisms. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Yes. So he's got over 12 years experience in research on the carbon markets. So we'll obviously be talking to you about that today. He's currently doing his PhD in management from the University of Exeter. And you've also been doing what apart from that? You've written a book also, haven't you?
Yes, I have written a book on carbon markets. That was way back in 2009.
All right.
And a few research papers. And
Okay. Carbon markets, carbon trading, carbon credits, all of these things, they seem like terms we know. But I'm not sure or any of us really know what we're talking about. So can you break that down for us a little bit first?
Absolutely. I think before we start, what are carbon markets, carbon trading, and carbon credits, the thing is why carbon markets, right? So we are facing climate change. Every day we keep reading reports that, we have broken the summer record for this decade. We have broken the winter records. The monsoon has been exceptionally strong on other things, or there is drought, right? So basically we are facing climate catastrophes.
Okay.
And we need to reverse the emissions that are causing this climate change, right? Now, reversing or reducing emissions is not a joke, because it's a lot of economics that goes into reducing, right? So tomorrow if I tell you, stop coming in your car and bring a bicycle, it's going to be difficult for you, right?
Yeah.
So that is why economists have come up with a trading mechanism to sort of help you reduce this carbon emission without really drastically changing your lifestyle.
Okay.
Right? So let's say I tell you to come on bicycle, you would say, Siddharth, hang on, I don't want to change my lifestyle. I can still come in car, but I will pay some extra money to you so that somebody somewhere can grow some trees in my name. And these trees will suck up the carbon dioxide of the emission from my car.
Okay.
Hence, that is called carbon neutrality.
All right.
Right? Becoming carbon neutral. On one side you are emitting, on the other side you are doing something that is good for the environment, that is sucking up the carbon emission.
So it's a kind of plus-minus situation.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right? So that is carbon neutral.
Yeah.
Now, this emission that you have reduced, if I convert it into some sort of a certificate or a commodity, right? Saying that, okay, this trees that you have grown, this 5 trees, for example, has sucked up, let's say, 5 tons of carbon dioxide. So I can say that, okay, I'll give you the certificate, which is 5 carbon credits.
Okay. So who gives the certification? How does this work?
So there are certifying agencies out there in the world. One used to be governed by the United Nations. That has kind of more or less dissolved. But then there are now private certification agencies like Verra, Gold Standard, Plan Vivo. There are different. They are called, in the carbon lingo, they are called registries, carbon registries. And they kind of give you the certification. And once you have this carbon credit, this certificate, it's almost like a share certificate kind of thing, depending on how many tons you have reduced. You can then give it to a polluter.
Okay.
Right? So in a carbon market, basically big companies, like Google's, the Microsofts, the Volkswagens and others, who cannot reduce emissions by themselves because, they have this whole factory setup done, right? So drastically shutting down Volkswagen doesn't make sense, right? So they would buy these certificates from people who are doing good for the environment. So it's like, on one hand, let's say someone is committing a sin in some way, but now, how do I pay the penance? I give you some money, I buy that penance certificate that I am now clean.
Okay. So you were talking about, you said big companies trade these. So where do we get these credits from? Because if I am going to go plant whatever number of trees for my travel, that's not going to amount to a lot.
Yeah.
So how do we go from there? Like, how you work with farmers, right?
Yeah.
So what does farming have to do with this? What is the connection?
So basically, because big corporations are buying these carbon credits, the volume of the credits that they buy is obviously very big, right? Hence, the emission reduction activity that has to happen on ground has to be at a big scale. Right? Now let's take the example of rural communities or farmers where these projects really happen across India also, right? Apart from other countries. Say you have, let's say, 5,000 farmers. Now these 5,000 farmers are given saplings of trees to grow.
Given by whom?
So there are intermediaries in
Okay.
between, like what we call as project developers.
So this is government or non-government?
These are private entities, and these projects are private in nature.
Okay.
Right? And they will give money, initial investment to the farmers, which is basically in form of saplings, in form of training, knowledge, blah, 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 through which the farmers will grow these saplings of trees, right? And these will be thousands of trees. I'm not talking 4 or 5 trees. The thousands of trees as such. And they have to take care of these trees, not just for 1 or 2 years, but for almost 25, 30 long years minimum. Right? These trees will grow. While these trees are growing on a regular basis, this project developers will check how they are growing, measure different parameters of the growth of the tree to calculate how much carbon is being sequestered into the soil through these trees, or how much carbon is reduced. Right? And this
One second, when you say sequestering carbon, what exactly does that mean? I mean, I
Oh, yeah.
know about photosynthesis.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but how does that translate? Where is this carbon going?
Yeah. So basically, trees work like a vacuum cleaner in some sense.
Yes.
Right? The photosynthesis process that we learnt in school, the carbon is used by the tree leaves for food, and that is going into the tree's system, and then through the stem and the roots, it is getting collected in the soil.
Okay, in what form?
In soil organic carbon.
Okay.
That's the form, right? So the soil organic carbon increases and that is measured.
Okay.
How much
so these are like solids, or how does, I mean, can you explain to us what it looks like if it's visible to the naked eye?
It's not visible to the naked eye. So it's like a carbon molecule that is getting sequestered into the soil.
All right. So it's like a sponge.
Yeah, kind of a sponge. In fact, the soil does get spongy once the soil organic carbon increases. If you see soil which is very hard, almost feels lifeless, is soils which have very low carbon content.
Okay.
Right? So when there is good greenery, good trees, good plants growing, the soil becomes very porous and spongy, right?
Okay.
It's because of the soil organic carbon that increases, right? So this is measured. And then once you have a number, obviously you have to get it audited by a third party so that, we know that the verification was done in the right way. You have not cheated anyone and things like that. Once the audit is done, the report is sent to the carbon registry that I was mentioning, and they will give you the carbon credits against how many tons of carbon dioxide you have sequestered. Right? Now, once you have the carbon credits, the project developer will go and find a buyer in the market. It's just like any other market, right? So either I can sell it directly to a corporation, like I can call up Google saying, hello Google, I have so many credits. Do you want to buy? If they want to buy, they will say yes, and you negotiate a price, just like we negotiate prices of regular commodities like shoes and whatever, right? Or else you sell it into an open market, just like, for example, for your vegetables, you have the APMCs, right? Where you go and all farmers come, they sell. Similarly, there are
carbon... like a wholesale market for carbon
sort of
credits.
A wholesale market. Or you can sell it to aggregators. There are people like who are wholesale dealers. So they'll buy the carbon credits from multiple such sources.
Sounds like a hassle though.
It is a very long process.
So how do small farmers get into this?
So basically, project developers usually in India, for example, work with grassroots NGOs that are working with rural communities, with farmers, right? And they kind of introduce the carbon project to these NGOs.
Okay, so you're telling me project developers approach the farmers and not the other way around?
Yes.
All right.
So they will approach the farmers through the NGOs and they will onboard them onto the project. And in this, there are different kinds of projects when you work with farmers or rural communities. One is typically the agroforestry projects that we call, which is basically plantations, tree plantations, right? That is the most common kind of projects which have been there for the last at least 15, 20 years. In recent times, because science is advancing, we have found ways how farming can actually increase the soil organic carbon, right? So basically, it has got two purposes. So right now, we are facing a crisis of food safety. Right?
Yes.
Our food is full of chemicals, pesticides, right? And also because of that, the nutritional value of our food has dropped significantly, right?
So when you say eat like your grandparents, we can't because we don't have the same crops.
Not the same crop, the same crop agricultural style, because we are chemical intensive now.
Okay.
Hence, new carbon projects are saying that try to leave chemicals, try to leave the pesticides, and start doing what we would call regenerative agriculture, or for example, the government is now promoting natural farming.
So is this the same as organic farming?
They are all kinds of the same family
Okay.
of what I would broadly call sustainable agriculture.
All right.
There are, of course, differences in the practices, and people strongly debate these differences. But for our common understanding, let's call it sustainable agriculture, within
Makes
which
sense.
organic falls, natural farming falls, regenerative falls, permaculture falls, all sorts of things are there. But essentially, good agricultural practices where you are leaving chemicals, you're leaving pesticides, you are doing not just monocropping,
Okay.
but you are doing multi-cropping. Different crops you are growing at the same time. You're rotating your crops. You're keeping your soil covered with what we call as cover crops, things like that, so that your soil organic carbon increases because of good agriculture, and because you are reducing pesticides and other fertilizers, you are reducing carbon emissions, right, through urea or DAP and others. So all of this gets calculated at the farm level, and that will generate you carbon credits. So it serves two purposes. One is you are reducing emissions. Secondly, you are making your soil better, more fertile. And third, our food gets improved, obviously. And lastly, the money of carbon credits can directly go to the farmers, kind of creating extra incentive money to switch or transition towards good practices.
All right. So is this a lot of money?
Unfortunately not.
Okay.
I mean, when you see the big volume of trade, it will look like a lot of money to you. So like it will, on an average, a project would look like per year it would generate 15 crore rupees.
Okay,
in
but
terms of revenue.
How many farmers does that spread across?
But because in India we have very smallholder farmers, when I say smallholder, basically 1 acre land or 0.5 acre land, which is very, very small. So for a carbon project to be viable in India, we have to aggregate lots of farmers. So minimum of, let's say, 12,000, 15,000 farmers you have to aggregate. And all the money that has been earned has to be spread out among so many farmers. And obviously the costs of doing a carbon project are very high. Why? Because the technology to measure carbon is expensive. The modeling that you have to do, the satellite data that you have to use, the test lab samples that you have to do, soil testing and things to determine whether the carbon has increased or not is an expensive process.
So is this because we are still relatively new to this? I mean, is it an India thing, or is it generally that the tech is not yet developed enough to be cheap?
So there are two things. One, it is expensive because, like I said, we are having small farmers, right? So the tech has to be applied in multiple plots. So for example, if you take Australia as an example, a farmer by himself, a single farmer would have at least 10,000 hectares of land or 20,000 hectares of land. Now in India, when you say 20,000 hectares of land, you are talking of 22,000 farmers. So that is one reason why it gets so expensive.
So
and
because you have to redo the thing
multiply with so many farmers, right? So that cost increases. And secondly, obviously, this is new science, right? So yes, the tech by itself is also like buying satellite imagery is expensive.
Okay.
And doing soil samples of so many farmers is expensive.
Coming back to your Australia example, I would assume that across, say, 10,000 hectares or whatever, you would still have variations in soil.
Yes.
So isn't that similar to what we are doing then?
So, I mean, the variation in soil is not much in that sense, because when you're looking at it as a farm, right, a farmer is doing the same crop.
Okay, yeah, I get it.
Same 2 or 3 crops, right? So the soil won't change drastically.
Okay, so your soil quality basically remains similar.
Yeah, the soil type that you're, so let's say you are taking a region, it has got a loamy soil or a sandy loamy soil. That will not change within 10,000 hectares.
It's true.
That will be the same. The the basic characteristic will remain same.
Okay, and then depending on how the farmer is using it, it remains similar as well.
Yeah.
All right. I think that is a lot for the start. We will be back in our next episode with more from Siddharth. For now, thank you very much for joining us. I hope you learned something from this, and if you have any questions, drop us a message, leave us a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You're here with me again, Marilyn Gore, and this is Benefit News. Thank you.